To stitch continuous feathers all the way around your border, we need to start them just a little bit different. So first of all, I'm going to make a decision as to what template I'm going to use, and this looks like a good one for here. Okay. Move this down a little bit. I've got my lines here that I can line up with the edge of the block. I want to make sure that I'm going to hit my spine. So what I'm going to do, a little bit different, I'm actually going to use this line on this side of my template. I'm going to pull my thread here. I'm going to stitch to the spine, and there we go. Okay, now I'm going to do a feather on the other side. This time I'm going to stop on this back line, which is where I started here. That's not big enough. Now I have to be aware of my 1/4 inch for my border. So I like to have my feathers and all of my stitching be about a 1/4 inch away from the edge. So if I were to put this on, my border, this first line here that you can't see, there we go. If I put this line here on my border, I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch away. That means my binding potentially could cut off my feather if I'm not careful. So I want to make sure that this line here is on my border, because now I'm stitching a 1/2 inch away, from the raw edge, which will give me a 1/4 inch when I add my binding. So there we go. Again, I'm going to stitch until I get to this back line. And usually I kind of take a locking stitch when I do this, when I get to the end, and I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do here is give myself some top thread, a separate design in the center of your border, or start your feathers and not, always have to stop and start them. I think I'm going to have to go to a 2 inch here. And there we go. We're going to start the fun of making these feathers going around, and we will now you can just go back up here. That makes things sometimes go a little bit faster. It means that all of your feathers are going to be double stitched. Now this one can go up here. And travel up our spine a little bit. It looks awful big. But I think the 2 is, well, I guess maybe we can get one more 2 in here. First I thought it was too small. Let's see what happens. Oh, yeah, we can keep going on that. Yeah, that's a 3-inch. Now, you can, if you want to, do these feathers whatever way you're comfortable doing them. So you can go, there we go, it's a thread, loose thread there. You can go always keeping this parallel and in line with your seam. Or you can do the turning. I, a lot of times, will mix both of them in this same border. One thing I will tell you, when you go from a smaller template to a larger one, you want to make sure that you stop closer to the outside edge of your plume so that you can accommodate the larger template. And now I'm going to start tilting my template a little bit. Travel up a little bit. Let's see. It's really, it's kind of close down there. I should take my spacing gauge or my backup spacing gauge, come along in here and see if I turn it this way, I'm way down off of the template down here, which is behind the machine back in this area. I'm going to float off of the template. I'm going to float off this area here before I get to the spine. I don't want to do that. So let me see if maybe you might be able to see a little better if I move the camera there. So I do want to make sure that I hit this spine before I go off of the template. I can a lot of times judge when I'm not going to hit. Sometimes I'm not super accurate. So I do recommend using this spacing gauge if it's going to help you, because you don't want to completely miss your spine. Let's see. Let's try something smaller here. I like that look. Again, spacing gauge, check it down here. There we go. So here we are in the corner. We just have to keep our eye on our spine. And we may need to travel up farther than, there we go. We may need to travel farther up the spine than what we normally would do. And now this kind of does not look great in here. This section back here is going to be super thick if I do that. So let's take out our 5" and see if we can kind of fill that in a little bit better. And yeah, it's still a thick section down here, but it does look a little bit better. So now we're going to come up here and we can make this one we're getting really close to our spine there. So I'm going to travel up a little bit further. And still, there we go. Now, that's too big. Come back here. See what we can do about now. I can do this right now, but I am going to have to turn my quilt because I'm going to end up with this part getting bigger and bigger and bigger as I move down my border, and it's not going to fit, or it's going to get crammed up underneath the throat of my machine. So this gives me an opportunity to put my templates away, maybe put my hand on my spacing gauge or not, and move my quilt. So I do this on every corner, and also this gives you kind of a view of what our corner looks like. So that is the inside corner. So we're going to keep going and fill this in and go around the corners. So here you go. You cannot tell where the feather started and where they ended. They go all the way around the border. Come up here, and there you can see another corner. We are now going to work in this cornerstone area. We could do just the cornerstone. It is a 4" block. We could do a 3.5" design in here, or we could take these two adjoining flying geese blocks and make this 3/4 of a design. Now that will make this border a little bit shorter. I think it's going to be fun. So we're going to put a spinifex here. Now, my spinifex is going to come around like this, right? And end up here. So I want to use these seams as the ending point for my design. Because it doesn't matter if things aren't perfect on this, the way that I'm going to end up, like if it ended up even just a skosh off, it's still going to look good. If it was a skosh over, it's still going to look good because we're not completing it. So I don't really need to put reference lines. Also, I already have 4, and then I have 5 here. So I have 5 out of my 8 reference lines, plus this particular template has a lot of reference lines on it. So I can use these with the 5 reference lines I have, and I will be fine. Now, the reason I don't want to start here and come this direction is because when I end up here, now what am I going to do? I'm going to have to make sure that I end there so that I can finish off at this area here, which I could do. If I was here, you know, I could backtrack to there, I could come down and come back up, but we might as well just start over here, right? So what I'm going to do is line up my template, and I'm going to pull my thread from here, and I'm going to stitch to there. So let's move you over. There we go. And let's tighten this up a little bit. Again, I'm lining my template up down here, and I'm going to pull my thread up here on the edge here. And all I need to do on this particular section is stitch over here to A. Since I can grab a hold of these. Finally, there we go. Stop. Now I'm going to turn my template, line it up, make sure I'm on the B there. I also have this line here. It's kind of a curve that I can see. Make sure you guys can see that. This line right here, this curve that I'm putting on top of what I've just stitched. That helps me line up as well. And then we'll just go around this like we normally would. Make sure that's lined up. I've got my reference lines down here that I'm lining up on the seam of my quilt. I'm going to stitch to A, and then I'm going to go back and stop in the middle. So I'm going to go to A, and then I'm going to backtrack. I could have gone the other direction as well. I could have come down to the center and then backtracked and gone up and stopped at A. Now I'm going to turn this. Again, line that up, line this up, and I should hit that. I can take my spacing gauge and check it with my backup spacing gauge. I have lots of spacing gauges. Make sure that when I come up here, I'm going to hit that, and I am. So I'm going to stitch around and stop at A. Turn the template, put it on B, line it up. So I'm looking back here. My head is like over to the way to the right so that I can see what I'm doing. And I'm lining my template up in the back. I can also come around and look at this side. If I do that, my head is going to block your view. So I've got that lined up. And hopefully we're in a good situation. So we're going to go to A. We're going to backtrack. come back down to the center. We're going to rotate. And things are lined up really well. Got these lines down here lined up. This time go to A and stop. Now, if you'd rather go to A and go all the way back, that's perfectly fine. If you're more comfortable doing that. Because this is the edge of my quilt, I can kind of move it a little easier than I can some of the other ones. See, I'm going to go to A and then come back. I don't want to stitch over that thread. And then this is going to be my last one. So again, I'm going to stitch up. I'm going to stop when I get to my seam allowance. And I'm just going to line up here, line this up. And that crossed it all down. Get to my seam allowance and stop. So there we have it. There it is. Let's move it over here. And here we go. And there we have it. So here is the partial spin effects feather. Just a nice way to fill in 3/4 of a section. Still allowed me to do something fun in that cornerstone. You could also use this for all 4 corners if you didn't want to do a small individual design, or you could take a design like this that we did previously, and let's see if you can, trying to get a good light on here for everybody to see. Okay, so we could have taken this design and put it in here, and then when we do the flying geese up here, we could have them come all the way up to the top if we wanted. So just some options on different things that you can do with cornerstones. This template is called the Circle Wreath Feathered Leaf. It comes in a set of 2 different templates, and these are the type of designs that you can make here on the picture. So you can make your leaves either go on the outside or the inside of the circle, or you can do both. This template works a little bit different than the other wreaths. There are 2 sections. So this, on the top number 1, you have 2 cutouts. You have a 1 and a 2. The 1 cutout coordinates with the number 1 pinhole. The 2 cutout coordinates with the 2, 3, and 4 pinhole. So you use this to stitch your circle, and then you do your leaf. This is the center, and this line here is the one that you're going to line up with your reference marks on your quilt. So let's take a closer look. This is the smaller one. This is the 5.5 inch size. So as you can see, here is your line that lines up. This is your number 1 pinhole. This is your number 1 side. This is number 2, and these are the pinholes 2, 3, and 4. Again, you stitch around, you rotate your template, you stitch around. So it's just a little bit different than the classic wreaths. There's not an A and a B. Then the larger one, same thing, just goes to an 11.5-inch size. Same holes. Now I've taken and I've put marker on my hole. It just makes it easier for me to see this on a lighter fabric. So there you go. That's how these templates work. Super fun. We are now going to work in this area. We have this cornerstone and then these 2 borders. We're going to use the Circle Wreath Feathered Leaf template set. And the reason I chose this one is because we have this Spinifex feather here in the connecting cornerstone, and it's a very rounded design. So the feathered leaves are not as round as the classic feather look, so I think it's going to be a really nice complement to do this. I've put my pin here in the middle, and this is going to be my rotation part for the template, and I'm going to stitch 3/4 of the design. So let's put the template down and see what that's going to look like. Now I have the center mark on my template, this line here. Make sure you can see it, this line here. And I already have natural places on my quilt that I can line this up with. So I have this seam here, right here, this seam there. That takes care of that one. I have the seam here on this flying goose. That works. Here's another seam. I don't have one in the center. I have a couple of options here. I have this point and I have this point. So I can line my template up on these points. This small one will work on this point, or I can draw a line from this point to this point. So if you are uncomfortable just using this mark right here on your quilt, go ahead and connect these 2 corners and use that as a line. Whatever you're more comfortable doing. We're going to turn this, keep it on the pin, and we have a line there. We have this seam here. Turn it this way on the diagonal. Now I have this, remember I used this one, so the bottom part of the template down here, I can use this line against here, and I also have this over here. So I'm going to line that up. I have a couple of options there, and then I have this one. I'm only going to use the 8 points. You can use 16. I'm just not going to do that. It's just kind of not a huge area. The rest of the quilt isn't heavily quilted, so I don't want to make this section heavily quilted either. The other thing that I've done is I have stable tape on the top and the bottom because I'm going to flip this around and I'm going to use it in both directions. I think that's really fun to do with the wreaths, is to change the direction. So I want to see what the largest shape I can get here because I want it to come out as far as I can. And so this is one of the templates, and if I put it here on the number 1 position, and that, if you remember, does this design where it goes above, that's way out beyond my quilt, and I don't want to stitch off into the border. So let's see what happens. We're going to go number 4, and I'm going to have to take these pins out. There we go. So if I use the number 4 one, that puts me down here, and that is going to take me about as far as I can get without going over the edge of this template here. So that looks like a good shape here. The next one I want to make smaller, so I'm going to use the other one, because if I go, this is only going to make it larger. So this is the smallest size I can make on the inside. Otherwise, they're going to be out farther. Now, if I were to take this one, let's go into the same hole, number 4. And that's going to stitch here, because if I go down this way and use this one, I think I'm going to run into the one here. Let's see what happens. My hole is there. That hole is there. Yeah, they're going to run into each other. See? Here and here. I don't want that. So, we are going to go to here, and now these won't run into each other. This one will not run into this one. So that's how I determine the size that I'm going to use. You can use your stitching line discs to work this out if you want to, but that's just how I do it. You can also measure with a ruler and see which one is going to fit. This is the one that's going to fit. This is the smaller of the two, and I am going to use pinhole number, let's make sure, pinhole number 4. There you go. We're going to use this line here to line up. Okay, we are ready to pull our threads. I'm going to start up here. This is the center of the design. I'm going to go up here, and on this way I want my feathers to come toward center, so they need to be shaped in this direction. Okay, put it on our hole right there. I am now going to pull my thread on my seam. So lower my foot. Now I just want to show you there's not a lot of wiggle room here. This fits really, really tight, but I tend to go on the outside when I stitch this template. So step number 1 is to pull our threads. And I'm going to hold my threads over here to the left because I'm going to stitch to the right. Line this up again. Make sure it's lined in it. And now I'm going to stitch around this shape and come back to where I am. Now, the way this template works is you rotate it this way and you stitch along here. You don't want to start here and start stitching because you're going to come down from your circle, and you don't want that. You want to be able to stitch your circle. So I'm going to move the template here. I'm lining it up with this up here. I'm going to come and I'm going to stitch this leaf. Come back to center, which is this line here. I'm going to rotate until I get to this one. So this seam here, again, I'm going to stitch my leaf. Turn, line up. Now, I'm not actually going to stitch on this one. I'm going to have the leaf come in from this line here to the center. So I don't need to stitch anything on this center. So I move my template and I'm going to stitch to this seam. And now I'm going to turn my template around so that it faces in the different direction. Trying to find the pin back there. There we go. So this line right on top of here, I'm going to stitch. Now I'm not sure if you can see, but I can see right here where my other leaf is coming in, and it's a 1/4 inch away from the edge of the template. So let me see if I can turn this so you can see. Can you see this leaf right here? That's what we're going to stitch towards, but we're not going to, we're just going to touch it, just the little corner. So if you're worried about it, you can move your template just a little bit to the left of this line, and then you know for sure you're going to clear it. So I'm going to stitch out to the leaf and come back to where I am right now. And they're just barely touching. Now I can stitch this direction. Again, I want this line on my reference line. Here we go, stitch the leaf. And now I'm going to end this part. And I have to use the line down here because that's, oh, there we go. I have to move a little. I forgot to stitch the line first. There we go. We have to stitch the circle before we can stitch the leaf. Every once in a while you forget something. And now I'm going to stitch the last leaf of this size. And we're going to take this off. And I'm going to turn this a little so you can see what we have going on so far. This is the little section that we have going on, and these are just touching each other right there. So now I want to use the other template on this same hole, and I want to stitch the lower one again, this one, and we need this to be up on the 4. So I do have to travel up here, and I can use a template if I want to travel in the seam allowance, which may not be a bad idea because it's pretty faint. And now we'll see if we're up far enough. We are not. We need to go up pretty far, so. You could break your thread here if you wanted and pull it up there again. The other thing that I went just a little too far. Oh no, I haven't gone far enough yet. There we go. The other thing that I'm going to do later is probably add something in here in the center where my pin is. I'm probably going to add something there. I don't want to do that right now because I'd have to remove the pin, and I don't want to take the pin out as of yet. So again, I want my leaves to face towards the center. Get this in here, put my pin in. See, well, we still have to go up a little bit more. There we go. Okay, there. Now I'm going to stitch this out and come back. I'm going to take all these things off of my quilt because it's not moving. I have too many things in the way here. Stitch the leaf and come back. Now remember, we have to turn this in order to stitch the wreath part. I want to stop when I get to that line because I don't want to curve down. Now I'm coming to this line, the same one that we used before for the smaller one. I'm going to stitch all the way down, make the design, come back up to the wreath, the circle. And I'm going to keep going like that. I have to stop here. I don't want to dent down. Now on the last one, we use this as a come down, but I think I want to go in the center. I want to change it a little bit and make it look a little different. So I do need to get to the center. I now have this center line here on my template, either on the line that I drew, but actually it's right on the point. So remember the last time we had the shape come in here and then the opposite. This way we're going to kind of make a bow out of it. So I want to keep this shape in the direction I was stitching. And now I'm going to turn the template so you can see it goes that way. Now I'm going to have it come out this way. So I'm just going to switch it up just a little bit. And then I'll be where I need to be to go back to the other side. There we go. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking that this is kind of bare and this is bare. So while I'm here, I'm going to add something. I'm going to use the finials. Sometimes when you're quilting, as you go along, you have an idea and then you think, oh, I need to maybe do something else there. So I'm going to take the finial templates and I'm going to add something in here. So I'm going to see what, oh, that's way too big of a size there. So let's come back here. Oh, look, that fits. So this is the third one down from, or the second biggest. So it's not the smallest one, it's the next one up. And again, I'm going to put my template back here because I think I'm going to do a couple of shapes. And I want to have the spot where we, actually no, I think I'm going to just do it plain there. So, but I still want to be able to stop where I started. So that's why I'm putting that template behind. And now I'm going to come this way, and I could use maybe the bigger template. So let's try this size. Oh, but I have to be careful because look, I'm getting really close to that pin. So I don't want to knock that pin out. I kind of want to stay. I could wait and do this later, but I think we're just going to go for it while we're here. I don't want to lose that pin. Okay. Now I could go this way, but I'm way close to the pin there. It's kind of scary. Again, I think I'm just going to leave it plain. So sometimes you can't fit things in there, and sometimes it's after everything is quilted where you look back and you say, oh, I want to add something. So you could add this now, you could add it later, or you could just leave it and not add anything, or add something totally different. You might have a different template that you want to use. So let's see, I have to do my leaves kind of, yep, I'm headed in the right direction. So let's get this back on that hole, and I've stitched that one. So now I need to follow the template to get past here. And let's see, I'm on this seam allowance, but oh, I don't want to stitch one here because I already have the shape there and I didn't do it on this one. So I'm going to the 45-degree angle, which is not here, right? That doesn't make sense because it's not matching up anywhere over here and it's not lined up. Oh, that's because I want to go to the next goose. There we go. Line up here. Do my shape.